Cheating is very hard to overcome and forgive. Someone just said that to me, and they're not wrong, but that's not the real question. Here's the real question that almost nobody asks and few know how to answer. Can a marriage actually recover after cheating? Or is that it? Game over, so to speak. Because some people will tell you, don't ever forgive it, just walk away. Once a cheater, always a cheater, right? And others will say you can absolutely rebuild something even better with this person. So which is it? Let's start here. Cheating is incredibly hard to overcome, no doubt. It's painful as all get out. It is incredibly disorienting. It does shake everything that you thought you knew about your marriage, your spouse, your relationship. So if you are in that place right now, I am so sorry. And please know nothing about what you're feeling is crazy. It is as real as it gets. So yes, cheating is very hard to forgive, but it is not impossible. I have personally walked countless couples through this in almost 14 years of working with couples in my private practice. And I have seen marriages rebuilt, not just repaired, actually rebuilt into something stronger, something better. Now, does that mean that I would wish infidelity on somebody's marriage? No, of course not. In the same way that you wouldn't wish something like a death of a loved one or cancer on somebody, even if it causes them to start living their life more fully or more responsibly afterward. We don't need the trauma, but that doesn't mean that sometimes people don't grow through the experience and become better as a result. Now, let's talk about forgiveness, because this is where people get really confused. I learned this years ago from Desmond Tutu in his book, The Book of Forgiving. I was reading it as I was dealing with a loss of a friendship at the time, and it completely shifted how I understood forgiveness. Forgiveness is not for the other person. It's for you. Let me say that again. You and I do not do the forgiving for their benefit. You are forgiving for your own freedom. Because if you don't forgive, you are the one that ends up carrying it all. You are the one replaying it in your head over and over again for years sometimes. You're the one holding the weight of it all. There's a line that I once heard that stuck with me. Unforgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping that the other person dies as a result. That's what it does. And if you know who originally said that, please let me know in the comments. I would love to give credit where credit is due. Forgiveness, however, does not mean you forget that it happened, you pretend that it didn't happen, you allow someone to deny it, or you automatically stay in the relationship. And this is the part that most people miss. Forgiveness and reconciliation, they are not the same thing. You can forgive someone and still choose not to be with them, not to stay in a relationship with that person. Those are two separate decisions. So, can a marriage recover after cheating? Yes, but only under certain conditions. And this I want to make really clear, because it's the part that matters the most. Because not all situations are going to be the same. For a marriage to recover, here's what you need. Here are the ingredients that are necessary. Ownership and not denial on the person's part. Genuine remorse. Willingness to understand how it happened. Willingness to rebuild the trust that was lost. And a shared desire to repair the relationship. If both people are on the same page, if the person who cheated is not minimizing, if that person is not deflecting or blaming, then yes, there can be a path forward. But no surprise here, it does and it will take work, and it does and it will take time. And it takes honesty on a level that most couples have never practiced before. Let me also say something that I feel like I can't not say in a conversation about infidelity, and that's this. The timing of healing is different for both people. And this creates a lot of tension, and it surprises us because we're not aware of it. Here's what I mean. If you just found out, if this is fresh for you, you are at the beginning of the process. You want to understand, you want answers, You want to ask all the questions. You want to know why it happened. You want to make sense of what you just found out about. But for the person who cheated, they are often at the end of that process, at the end of that reckoning. They already went through it. Now that it's out, they just want it to be over. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to revisit it. They don't want to revisit any questions. They don't want you to be curious. They just want to move on. So now you have this dynamic where one person is desperate to talk about it and the other person is desperate to stop talking about it at all cost. And that mismatch, it's what creates even more pain in the process, because the person who was hurt feels like, why won't you talk about this with me? Why don't you care enough that I need to understand? Why are you trying to rush me? And the person who cheated feels like, how long are we going to stay here? How long is it going to take? Can we just move forward? Can we just forget that it happened altogether and just move on? Do we really have to keep going over this? And here's the truth. Both of those experiences, they absolutely make sense, but they're not aligned. What feels like the end for one person is the beginning for the other. And this is where couples need to understand you cannot rush the healing of the person that is hurt. Processing, it's not optional. Understanding, also not optional. At the same time, you also don't stay in endless interrogation forever. There has to be a path forward. But in the beginning, the person who was hurt needs space and time to process. And the person who cheated needs to be willing to stay present in that process for them, even when, or especially when, it's uncomfortable. If you're in this stage right now, what you're feeling is normal. Please know that. But you do need a plan for how to move through it. Let me answer a few questions that people don't always say out loud, but they are absolutely thinking. The first one is, will I ever be able to trust my spouse again? This is one of the biggest ones, no surprise there. And the answer is not right away. Trust is not something you decide, although a decision is absolutely necessary and you need to decide also. And trust is something that is rebuilt over time. And here's how you rebuild it. Are you ready? It's consistency with transparency and follow through. And honestly, some couples don't rebuild the same kind of trust that they had. They build a different kind of trust in the end, a more intentional one. The second question, will I ever stop thinking about it? Also very real. Because a lot of people are like, I keep replaying it in my head. I can't seem to stop it. I can't seem to find the pause button. I keep picturing it. I keep imagining them with that person. I can't get it out of my head. Please know this is normal. That's your brain trying to make sense of something that broke your reality. That does not mean, though, that you're broken. It just means that you're processing. But that's also why this takes time. You will be able to stop thinking about it, but don't expect that to be the reality right away. The third question is it my fault? And I'm going to be honest, this one breaks my heart a little every time somebody asks it, because a lot of you go there. A lot of people look at the reality and say, what did I do to deserve this? What did I do to mess this up to drive them to doing this? And the answer is this: you are not responsible for your spouse's decision to cheat. Now, were there issues in your marriage? Likely. But cheating on their part was still a choice that they made. There would have been a dozen other options of what they could have chosen from, and they decided that cheating was the answer. We don't excuse the choice. We can understand it, we can unpack it, but we don't shift the responsibility. I don't want you walking around thinking this was my fault. Number 4, what if I forgive and they do it again? This is probably the most scary question that couples will ask. That is where the fear lives. And this is why forgiveness and reconciliation must stay separate, because forgiveness is something that you do internally. Reconciliation, on the other hand, that requires evidence. It requires change on your partner's part. It requires safety. And they have to create that. You don't blindly trust again. You rebuild based on what they have shown you. If you like the evidence that you've been given, if you like the change that you've seen, if you appreciate the safety that they've created, then stay with them. And if they do it again, you have to make a decision about, what am I going to do when that happens? How am I going to behave? What is my boundary? What is my response going to be? Number 5, does staying make me weak? And this has come up more in the last couple of years versus at the beginning of my practice, but the answer is no. Leaving doesn't automatically make you strong. What matters is whether you are making a conscious and clear decision. I don't want you to be making a fear-based decision about this matter, not even a pressure-based decision. What I want you to make is a decision that is grounded, a decision that you like, a decision that you can stand behind. Now, let's also be very clear. Cheating might be the end. If this is repeated behavior, if this goes back to what are you going to decide if this happens again? How am I going to behave? What is my boundary? How many times am I going to have this? How many times am I going to let this happen before I do something more drastic? Cheating might be the end if there is no ownership at all, or if it's so minimal that it's close to none. If there is no change, if you don't see changes in behavior, changes in attitude, if you're not getting the love, the safety, the respect that you need and that you deserve. You don't have to stay, and you might choose not to. But bottom line, you will get to choose. So the real question isn't, should you stay or should you go? The real question here is, what is actually happening right now? What am I noticing? How are they showing up? Are they showing up with remorse? Are they doing the work? Are they abiding by the rules that I set out for a while until I get the trust rebuilt up again that I need to? Are they taking the responsibility? Do you still want this relationship? Because both realities are true. A marriage can survive cheating, and cheating might also end a marriage. At the end of the day, you're not deciding whether cheating is forgivable in general. You are deciding this instead for yourself, for your relationship, for your marriage. What do I want to do with this? Do I want to carry this forever, or do I want to release it for my own sake? Do I want to rebuild this relationship of ours? Do I want to forgive and move on without this person in my life? Both are totally valid. But don't confuse forgiveness with staying, and don't confuse pain with impossibility. Because I've seen both outcomes, and bottom line, if you're both on the same page about saving this marriage of yours, if you hear nothing else from this video, hear that. It is so possible. Now, if you're wondering what healthy versus unhealthy responses look like after cheating in a marriage, I actually break that down in another video. It's this one right here. Go watch that next. I'll see you in there.